After my husband's funeral, I attended my sister's son's first birthday party, where she declared, "My son is your husband's child. As his inheritance, I'll be taking half of your $800,000 house." She even waved his will at me. I just smiled and said, "Oh, I see," struggling not to laugh, "because my husband." Imagine burying your husband, the love of your life, only to have your sister stand up at a child's birthday party and claim her baby was his, demanding half your home as inheritance. What's even crazier? I almost burst out laughing. Because the truth she didn't know. It would shatter her entire plan. My name is Bridget, and at 34, I never expected to be a widow. 3 months ago, I lost Adam, my husband of 11 years, to a sudden aneurysm. The pain was indescribable. Just days after the funeral, I dragged myself to my nephew Lucas's first birthday party. The last thing I wanted was to celebrate, but family, right? That's where my sister, Cassandra, decided to drop a bomb that would change everything. She announced, to a stunned room, that Lucas was actually Adam's son. And then, she pulled out a will, claiming half of my $800,000 home. Can you believe the audacity? But as she spoke, I had to physically bite my lip to keep from laughing. You'll understand why in a minute. If you've ever felt family drama hit too close to home, take a second to like and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to hear how I handled what came next. Adam and I met 12 years ago. He was this incredibly thoughtful, brilliant corporate attorney, the kind of man who'd outbid everyone for a painting I'd admired, just to hand it to me with a smile that crinkled his blue eyes. We fell hard. We bought our Victorian home in Beacon Hill, a real dream, and envisioned a future with kids playing in the garden. Those kids, though, they never came. We tried everything, charts, plans, doctors, 4 grueling rounds of IVF that drained our savings and our spirits. I still remember the quiet drive home after the last failed attempt. Adam held my hand, neither of us speaking. We just knew. That road was closed. We can still have a beautiful life, Adam had said that night, sitting on our porch swing. You and me, that's enough. And he meant it. We rebuilt our dreams. We traveled. We poured ourselves into our careers and renovated our house into the showcase home I'd always imagined. Our life was full, even if it was different than we'd first planned. My younger sister, Cassandra, was always this shadow in the periphery of our happiness. For years younger, 30 at the time, she was the family's wild child. While I built my design career, she bounced between jobs and relationships. My parents constantly worried, which usually meant making excuses for her and bailing her out of every financial mess. Cassandra and I always had this complicated, competitive dynamic. If I achieved something, she had to one-up me. When I dated Adam, she suddenly became interested in law students. When we bought our house, she complained for months, fishing for my parents to upgrade her apartment. It was exhausting. But Adam, ever the peacemaker, always encouraged me to maintain the relationship. She's your only sister, he'd say. Family is important. 2 years before Adam died, Cassandra started dating Tyler, a tattooed bartender. Their relationship seemed volatile, full of dramatic breakups and passionate reconciliations. Then, at Thanksgiving dinner that year, came the pregnancy announcement. Unexpected, to say the least. After all our struggles, all our heartbreak, Cassandra had accidentally achieved what Adam and I had desperately wanted. I felt that familiar sting of jealousy, but I pushed it down. I was genuinely happy for her, and I was determined to be the best aunt possible. Lucas was born a healthy 8 pounds, 4 ounces. I was there, with flowers and a handmade blanket. Cassandra, though, seemed overwhelmed by motherhood. She'd call me in tears about colic or exhaustion. I stepped in as much as I could, even watching Lucas overnight so she could sleep. Adam, I noticed, was less involved with Lucas than I was. At the time, I just figured it was because of our own infertility struggles, that it might be too painful for him to bond with a baby that wasn't ours. I never questioned his distance. Then came that terrible Tuesday. Adam complained of a headache before work. I begged him to stay home, but he had an important client meeting. Just a migraine, he'd insisted, kissing me goodbye. I'll call you after the meeting. That call never came. Instead, I got one from the hospital. By the time I arrived, he was already gone. Brain aneurysm. Nothing could have been done, they said. He was 36. The next days passed in a blur of grief. Cassandra was strangely absent. Text messages claiming Lucas was sick, or she couldn't find a babysitter. When she did appear at the funeral, she stayed briefly, keeping to herself. I was too numb to think much of it. 1 week after we laid Adam to rest, Lucas's first birthday arrived. The last thing I wanted was to attend a children's party, but my mother insisted. Adam would want you to go, Bridget. Family comes first. So, I found myself driving to Cassandra's small rental house, a wrapped gift on the passenger seat, and dark circles under my eyes that no concealer could hide. I had barely slept. No one should have to fake happiness so soon after losing their husband, I thought, but I plastered on a smile and knocked. Cassandra's friend, Jenna, opened the door, her eyes widening slightly at the sight of me. "Oh, Bridget, you made it," she said, her voice oddly strained. "Everyone is in the backyard." The house was decorated with blue balloons. I noticed a group of people I didn't recognize clustered in the kitchen, whispering. They fell silent as I passed. In the backyard, my parents sat awkwardly at a picnic table, looking uncomfortable. My father stood, relief washing over his face. "Bridget, we weren't sure you'd come." "Of course I came," I replied, setting the gift on the table. "Where's the birthday boy?" "With Cassandra," my mother said, not quite meeting my eyes. "They should be out soon for the cake." I mingled awkwardly, accepting condolences and deflecting questions about how I was holding up. Everyone seemed on edge, conversations stopping abruptly when I approached. I just chalked it up to people not knowing how to act around a newly minted widow. After 30 uncomfortable minutes, Cassandra emerged from the house, carrying Lucas on her hip. She was wearing a new dress, her hair freshly highlighted. Lucas looked adorable. Cassandra barely acknowledged me as she placed him in his high chair. She seemed energized, almost giddy, moving around the yard with unusual confidence. She tapped a spoon against her cup, calling for everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming." To celebrate Lucas's special day, she began, her voice carrying across the yard. "This past year has been full of surprises and challenges, as many of you know." Guests exchanged glances. My mother suddenly became very interested in her shoes. "I have been keeping a secret," Cassandra continued, placing a hand on Lucas's head. "One that I can no longer hide, especially after recent events." A chill ran down my spine. Something was very wrong. "Lucas is not Tyler's son," she announced. Her eyes found mine across the yard. "He is Adam's." The world seemed to stop. I heard gasps, felt my father stiffen beside me, but it was all background noise to the roaring in my ears. My sister was claiming she'd slept with my husband. That her son, the nephew I had lovingly cared for, was actually Adam's child. It was so absurd, I almost laughed out loud. Cassandra wasn't finished. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document. "Bridget's husband and I had a brief affair 2 years ago. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness for both of us. We never meant to hurt anyone, but these things happen." Adam knew the truth about Lucas. Before he died, he updated his will. She held up the paper. He wanted his son to be provided for. "This will states that half of the house Adam and Bridget own should go to Lucas as his biological child." Every eye in the yard turned to me. I could see the pity, the morbid curiosity, the discomfort. My parents looked stricken. My father half standing, unsure whether to intervene. And then, to everyone's surprise, including my own, I felt a smile tugging at my lips. Not a happy smile, but the kind that comes when something is so outrageously, impossibly false that it becomes almost comical. I pressed my lips together, trying to contain the inappropriate laughter bubbling up inside me. "Oh, I see," I said finally, my voice calm and even. I took a sip of water, buying time, pushing down the urge to laugh in my sister's face. "May I see this will, Cassandra?" Her confident expression faltered slightly. She clearly hadn't expected this reaction. Slowly, she walked over and handed me the document. A typed page with what appeared to be Adam's signature at the bottom. I scanned it quickly, noting inconsistencies immediately. The formal language was all wrong. Nothing like the legal documents I had seen Adam bring home. And the signature, while similar to Adam's, was clearly, obviously forged. The connecting stroke between the A and D was wrong. The final flourish too pronounced. I carefully folded the paper and handed it back to her. "Thank you for sharing this with me. I think I need to go now." "That's it?" Cassandra asked, confusion evident in her voice. "You're not going to say anything else?" "Not right now," I replied calmly, gathering my purse. "This is Lucas's day. We can discuss this privately later." I said goodbye to my shell-shocked parents, promising to call them soon. As I walked to my car, I could hear the murmurs behind me. The party atmosphere completely shattered. Once inside my car, safely out of view, I finally let out the laugh that had been threatening to escape. It started small, then grew until tears were streaming down my face. Not tears of joy, but a strange, intense mix of grief, anger, and incredulous disbelief at my sister's audacity. Because there was something Cassandra didn't know. Something Adam and I had never shared with anyone. Something that made her elaborate lie not just hurtful, but impossible. The truth about Adam and Cassandra began 3 years ago, long before Lucas was even conceived. We had invited my sister over for dinner to celebrate her new job. Adam had prepared his famous lasagna. It was a pleasant evening, until I excused myself to take a work call from a client having a design emergency. The call took longer than expected, nearly 20 minutes. When I returned to the dining room, the atmosphere had changed. Adam looked uncomfortable, and Cassandra was sitting much closer to him, her hand on his arm, laughing. I thought nothing of it at the time. Cassandra had always been affectionate, and the wine had been flowing. But later that night, as we were getting ready for bed, Adam seemed troubled. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "And I don't want it to cause problems between you and your sister, but I also don't want to keep secrets from you." He explained that while I was on the phone, Cassandra had made a pass at him. Nothing dramatic, just inappropriate comments about how lucky I was, followed by a suggestion that he deserved someone who could truly appreciate him. When he rebuffed her, she laughed it off as a joke. I was hurt, but not entirely surprised. Cassandra had always pushed boundaries. We decided to let it go as an isolated incident, something caused by wine and her usual competitive nature. But it wasn't isolated. Over the next few months, Cassandra found ways to touch Adam when I wasn't looking. She sent text messages that walked the line between friendly and flirtatious, and once, she showed up at his office uninvited, asking him to lunch. Each time, Adam gently but firmly maintained boundaries. And he told me immediately afterward. After the office incident, we even confronted my parents. It didn't go well. They suggested Adam was misinterpreting friendly gestures, and that Cassandra just looked up to him as a brother. My mother even suggested, with good intentions but terrible judgment, that perhaps Adam was feeling flattered by the attention and exaggerating the situation. That night, Adam and I made a decision. We would create distance from Cassandra without causing a full-blown family rift. We declined invitations that included her, made sure we were never alone with her. Adam even blocked her number after she sent a particularly suggestive late-night message. Then came the medical issue that changed everything. Adam had been experiencing pain for weeks before finally seeing a urologist. The diagnosis was a varicocele, an enlargement of veins, requiring surgery. The procedure went well, but there was a complication. The doctor recommended a vasectomy during the same surgery due to the extensive nature of the varicocele and the potential for recurrence. It was a difficult decision, especially given our past fertility struggles, but we agreed it was the right choice for Adam's health. The vasectomy was performed 2 years before Lucas was conceived. We kept this medical information private. Even our parents didn't know. After years of invasive questions about our childless status, we had learned to protect our privacy around reproductive issues. The only people who knew were Adam, myself, and Adam's doctors. After the surgery, as Adam was recovering, he made a prediction that seemed paranoid at the time. "Cassandra is not done," he said, sitting in our garden with an ice pack discreetly positioned. "I have a feeling she might try something more drastic one day." I laughed it off, but Adam was serious. The next week, he scheduled an appointment with our family attorney, James Wilson. I went with him, listening as Adam detailed Cassandra's behavior and his recent medical procedure. James recommended documenting everything, the unwanted advances, the medical records confirming the vasectomy, even text messages and emails from Cassandra. "You never know what might become relevant," James advised. "Better to have documentation and never need it than wish you had it later." We followed his advice, creating a file of everything related to the situation. Adam also updated his will, properly, through official channels, making sure everything would come to me in the event of his death. James kept copies of all documents, and we placed the originals in a safety deposit box at our bank. "Just in case," Adam had said, when we locked the box. Though I plan to be around to deal with any of Cassandra's drama for at least another 50 years. The morning after Lucas's birthday party, I drove straight to the bank. The manager, who had known Adam and me for years, expressed condolences as he led me to the vault. I sat alone in the small viewing room and opened the box Adam and I had filled with what he jokingly called our disaster preparation kit. Inside was exactly what I needed. Adam's legitimate will, notarized and properly executed, leaving everything to me. Medical records detailing his vasectomy 2 years before Lucas's conception, making it biologically impossible for him to be the father. A journal Adam had kept, documenting every inappropriate interaction with Cassandra, including dates, times, and exact quotes. Printed copies of text messages she had sent him. A letter from our attorney confirming that he had witnessed Adam's legitimate will and was available to verify its authenticity. And at the bottom of the box, a sealed envelope with my name written in Adam's familiar handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened it and began to read. "My dearest Bridget, if you are reading this, something has happened to me, and you have needed to access these documents. I hope it is many years from now, when we are old and gray, and Cassandra's antics are nothing but a distant memory we laugh about. But if not, if the worst has happened, and she has tried to hurt you in my absence, please know that I tried to prepare for every possibility. Use these documents to protect yourself. I know how much you value family, how loyal you are to those you love. But you deserve to be protected from those who would take advantage of that beautiful heart of yours. I love you beyond words, beyond time. Whatever happens, know that. Adam." Tears streamed down my face as I read his words, feeling his love and protection reaching out to me even after death. My practical, thoughtful husband had anticipated this. Not the specific scenario, perhaps, but the possibility that Cassandra might try to use his death to her advantage. I carefully returned everything to the box, except what I needed, copies of the medical records, the legitimate will, and selected journal entries. Then I called James Wilson and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. James Wilson's law office was in a converted brownstone in downtown Boston, the kind of place that exuded old money and discretion. I had only been there a handful of times with Adam, but the receptionist recognized me immediately, her expression softening with sympathy. "Mrs. Preston," she said, standing to greet me. "Mr. Wilson is expecting you. Please accept my condolences for your loss." James, in his 60s with silver hair, stood when I entered. He came around his desk to embrace me briefly. "Bridget," he said, "I was devastated to hear about Adam. He was one of the good ones. He was, I agreed, my voice catching slightly. And it seems he was also right about preparing for the worst with my sister. I explained what had happened at the birthday party, showing him the forged will Cassandra had presented. James examined it, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "This is an amateurish forgery," he said finally. "The language is all wrong, and the signature, while similar, would never stand up to expert analysis. But the fact that she created this at all is deeply troubling." I showed him the documents from the safety deposit box, the medical records confirming Adam's vasectomy, the legitimate will, and Adam's journal documenting Cassandra's behavior over the years. "Adam was nothing if not thorough," James said, reviewing the materials. "These medical records alone disprove her claim about Lucas's paternity. The vasectomy was performed 2 years before the child was conceived. It is biologically impossible for Adam to be the father." "What should I do?" I asked. "I don't want to humiliate her publicly, but I cannot let her take half of our home based on a lie." James leaned back in his chair, considering. "First, we need more information. I recommend hiring a private investigator to look into Cassandra's current situation. There is likely a motivation beyond simple cruelty here. People rarely attempt fraud of this nature without financial pressure." He recommended Frank Delaney, a former police detective who now worked as a private investigator, often on cases for the firm. I agreed, and James made the call immediately, explaining the situation in broad strokes. Frank arrived an hour later, a stocky man with a Boston accent and a no-nonsense attitude. He took detailed notes as I explained, asking pointed questions about Cassandra's relationships, employment history, and financial status. I realized how little I actually knew about my sister's current circumstances. We had grown further apart since Lucas's birth, with my attempts to be involved as an aunt often rebuffed or taken for granted. "I will need a few days," Frank said when I had finished. "My preliminary focus will be on her financial situation and relationship with the child's actual father. Is there anything else you can tell me about him?" I shared what little I knew about Tyler, the bartender Cassandra had been dating. I had only met him a handful of times, and he seemed uninterested in family gatherings. "Last I heard, they were still together, but she rarely mentions him anymore. He wasn't at the party yesterday, which I thought was strange for the father of the birthday boy." Frank nodded, making another note. "That's a good starting point. I'll be in touch soon." 3 days later, Frank called, requesting a meeting at James's office. When I arrived, both men were reviewing documents spread across the conference table. "Mrs. Preston," Frank began once we were seated, "I have uncovered some concerning information about your sister's situation." According to his investigation, Cassandra was in dire financial straits. She had accumulated over $75,000 in debt across credit cards, personal loans, and medical bills for Lucas, who had needed surgery for a heart defect shortly after birth. Her credit score was abysmal, and she had been rejected for 3 additional loans in the past month alone. "She is also facing eviction," Frank continued, sliding a document across the table. "This is a copy of the notice her landlord filed last week. She has until the end of the month to pay 4 months of back rent or vacate the property." As for Tyler, he had apparently abandoned Cassandra and Lucas shortly after the birth, moving to Seattle with a new girlfriend. He was paying minimal child support, barely $200 a month, and even that irregularly. "I also found these," Frank said, producing printouts of text messages. "She has been telling friends about her plans to claim part of your house for weeks. These are messages between her and a friend named Jenna." I recognized the name as the woman who had opened the door at the party. The messages were damning. "Adam's death is terrible, but maybe it's finally my chance to get what I deserve. That house is worth at least $800K now. If I play this right, I'll have a nice nest egg for Lucas and me. The will is almost ready. My friend Dave is good with Photoshop and found a sample of Adam's signature online from some charity auction. It looks totally legit. Bridget has always been the golden child. Time for me to get my share. She got 11 years with a great guy. The least she can do is share the wealth now that he's gone. I felt physically ill reading the calculated coldness of my sister's words. This was not just opportunism. It was premeditated fraud, designed to capitalize on my grief. There is more, Frank said gently. I ran a background check on Tyler Martin, the actual father. He has a history of domestic violence charges from a previous relationship and currently has a warrant out for unpaid child support for another child in New Hampshire. He is not someone you would want around your nephew. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process everything. My sister was not just desperate. She was willing to destroy Adam's reputation and our marriage to solve her financial problems. And her choice in partners had put Lucas in a potentially dangerous situation. What do I do with all this? I asked, looking between James and Frank. I cannot just expose all of this publicly. Lucas is innocent in all of this. He is still my nephew. James removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. You have several options, Bridget. We could file charges against Cassandra for attempted fraud and forgery. That would likely result in criminal penalties for her, possibly even jail time given the amount of money involved. Or, he continued, seeing my distress, we could handle this privately. Confront her with the evidence, require her to retract her claims, and potentially work out an arrangement that protects both you and the child. I left the meeting with a heavy heart and a folder full of evidence. That evening, I called my therapist, Dr. Laurel Chen, whom I had been seeing since Adam's death, and scheduled an emergency session. In her calm, plant-filled office, I unloaded the entire situation. I am so angry I can barely see straight, I admitted. But Lucas is just a baby. None of this is his fault. And despite everything, Cassandra is still my sister. Dr. Chen listened attentively. It sounds like this. Pattern of competition and manipulation has existed since childhood, she observed. The current situation is an escalation, not an anomaly. What would you do? I can't tell you what decision to make, she replied. But I will say that compassion does not mean allowing yourself to be victimized. You can be kind while still establishing firm boundaries and consequences. After much reflection, I decided on a course of action. I would confront Cassandra privately with all the evidence, offering her a choice, face potential legal consequences for her fraud, or accept a compromise that would provide for Lucas while requiring accountability from her. With renewed determination, I called Cassandra the next morning. We need to talk about the will, I said when she answered. Can you come to my house tomorrow afternoon? Just, Lucas, I knew you would come around, she replied, sounding smugly satisfied. I'll be there at 2. I spent the morning preparing for Cassandra's visit, arranging documents in a logical order, and setting up recording devices on James's advice. Massachusetts is a two-party consent state, he had warned me. So you cannot record her secret